you've come from Mangapla, bookended your career with grand finals at the club, with your first being at the age of 17 and the most recent at the age of 41. What was it like to leave as a young fella from the country to pursue your dream at the Swans?
It was pretty daunting, really. I didn't have a job or any idea of what I was going to, and the Swans, it was a bit of a surprise to me that they wanted me up there. You know, it was all a bit of a shock along the way. So I couldn't say it was a dream, because I probably didn't even dream that big. It was just an opportunity that knocked on my door just after year 12, and I didn't have any other plans. And you know, I didn't have a footy family, so I didn't really have anyone telling me that I was good enough. And when the call came, I thought it was someone playing a prank on me, really. So Greg Leach, who was recruited from the Swans, got Cole Kinnear down, who was the coach at the time, and they asked me to go up there. So went up and yeah, lived in the club. The club owned a boarding house, and at that time there was 12 country boys living in the boarding house, and fortunately for me, a few of them I knew. Jason Mooney and I had gone to school together since year 3, so he was probably one of the best mates. Shared a room with him, and there was 10 other boys in there living with Anna and Ned, who were the people that looked after the house, an older couple. And yeah, and then started the process of training and finding a job, and because really back then we weren't getting paid, so we had to work. And I trained with the under-19s initially in 1990 pre-season, and then got the opportunity. They said they were doing a roster where the 19s could train with the first grade 1 week each, and I was first up. And then I never left. I trained with the first grade and got picked in round 1 for the seconds, which is a funny story in itself, where I was looking at the selection board on the Thursday night after the training, seeing the first grade side and the reserve grade side for the Swans for round 1. We were playing Brisbane at Carrara, and there was an Irvin in the back pocket. And I'm looking around the room thinking there must be some other bloke here called Irvin, because I thought I'd be in the under-19s. I didn't think I was playing seconds. And then people started congratulating me. So it was all very much like that for me. It was always a constant sort of surprise, if you like.
Great space here, being created by the double blues. Oh!
That was a good body contest. Let's see whether he takes him high, drops the shoulder. Yeah, got him high. That's the free kick.
The game will be held up here until Irvin can either get to his feet or a stretcher can get out there. Irvin wants to play on. He's a pretty tough customer, as Nathon Irvin puts his hands on his head. He will be dazed for a while. A player cannot receive that sort of hit and continue with a clear head.
I was playing in South Australian League for Sturton Grand Final, so there's about 50,000 at the footy park in Adelaide, and the SANFL is a big deal over there, and this was the biggest crowd football park it ever had, even bigger than AFL crowds. And Sturt, the side I was playing in, had been bottom for 10 years in a row, and really had a real tough era, and we'd got ourselves to the top of the ladder and made the grand final, and then had a pretty good side. And we're playing against Port Adelaide, who that year had some ridiculous number of blokes play in the AFL. I think it was, 10 or so players had played in the AFL that year for them, line up in the grand final. So it was a pretty monumental task to beat them. And yeah, during the second quarter, I was sort of floating across the half-back line on one of our kick-outs, and our fullback sort of kicked it over the top of me a little bit, and I had to run with the flight of the ball, as you do in the old days, I suppose, and you're always at risk of getting hit. So I took the mark and sort of thought that I would be able to play on, so I was turning to take off, and I think it was one of the Burgoynes, or yeah, there's a bit of conjecture about who actually hits me, but they hit me pretty hard straight off the bench, and yeah, my head bounced a bit off the ground and did a bit of a somersault, and broken jaw and very heavy concussion. And look, back then you were encouraged to not show that you were hurt, although I was unconscious for a few moments, and you just get up and go on with it. So, I think that was the way football was, and we were encouraged to be like that. And I certainly wasn't the toughest player going around by any means. And as a kid, I was quite frightened around here playing against the likes of Dick Carey and those guys that legitimately could hurt you. So you sort of start to get used to it as your career goes on, and I was able to sort of push through that one and played the rest of the game out not remembering a great deal about it. Probably the latter part of the game I was starting to come to a bit. But my teeth didn't... I went off at half-time, I was trying to work out what my injuries were, and the doctor was looking at me, and I remember my teeth weren't going together very well, so I knew it was not good. I knew that my jaw was probably going to be broken. But again, that was a grand final, and in those days, you're encouraged to keep going, and yeah, it was a school of hard knocks, I suppose, to some degree, but that was just the way football was, and I think it is to some degree still, but it's managed a lot better, and I think it's a good thing because certainly we know now the repeated head injuries aren't ideal for your brain.
So you've now played at local and elite level. What have you found are the different challenges you've faced?
I think a lot of the time there's similar challenges. I think the biggest thing in footy clubs, whether that be at elite or local level, is getting your organisational structure right, and that's off the field stuff. If that's all good, I think generally tends to flow well and truly through the club, whether that's at higher level or lower level. The thing that's more difficult and more challenging at lower levels, especially as a coach at lower levels, is not everyone's as passionate as you are about it. You know, it's a social thing for some people, and everybody's at the footy club for different reasons. So for me, the biggest challenge was understanding that and embracing that. You can't expect everybody's going to want to train like an elite athlete or spend as much time at the club as what people at higher level would be, and they're all obviously they're not paid at local level, they're volunteers, which I think is awesome. So for me, the biggest transition was just being able to not get stressed about the little things that you can't be perfectionistic, you can't have everything perfect at the local level. It is what it is, and you've got to work within the challenges and the constraints that you're given. And at the higher level, you still have people get to that level that are a challenge. Players that are lazy, players that go out in the piss or get on drugs or have got depression, or a lot of those similar issues are at the elite level, just because they're. There's a good saying that Tony Turner, who coached me here at Mango many years ago, said to me. I never really understood when he said it. It was, you can't put brains in monuments. And just because someone is at a higher level or they're famous or they're great doesn't mean they don't have the same issues as everyone else, and we're seeing a lot more of that these days. And then coming back and coaching at the local level, you see all those things, and as a coach you're dealing with lots of little bits of issues that you never thought you would. Players' personal challenges and personal issues become and affect the football club and you, and you're in a good position to help a lot of young guys. So you do, and that's part of the deal.